welcome to the New Earth Co-Creators podcast. I'm Deborah Bishop, otherwise known as Rev Deb, and my lovely, gorgeous co-host is here, Miss Isabel Hunt. How
Thank
are you?
you. Thank you. Yeah, today's actually a really great day. I have to say, the last couple of weeks I have been on a high. I'm not sure why, but maybe because I'm really tapping into my sweet spot of connecting with people. I mean, it's an entire picture, from people who create intentional communities to hemp houses to
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's just been absolutely incredible just to get to those people and just see how it all comes together with New Earth, how we can support each other. I talked with someone about the People's Health Alliance. So it's an entirely new health system that is being created already in over 30 countries. And I'm excited
Wow.
to tap more into that and hear more and learn more. And I think we will eventually bring those people on the show as well, to have them hear about that. But today we want to talk about what
Dun,
keeps
dun,
us?
dun.
That's right. What keeps us from engaging in community? What keeps us
Mm.
to really um, bring us closer? Because I think over the last 3 years in particular, it has become very clear what kind of excuses and reasons, and it doesn't matter if they're being selective or unconscious or conscious, what we use in general to stay away to keep ourselves safe by staying away from people, to avoiding the uncomfortable and connecting with people.
Yeah, and I think it's good to sort of be perhaps a little more generous in the respect of talking about it. Maybe not as, I mean, yes, it comes across as an excuse, it comes across as things like that. But for the individual often who's caught up in it, they are making excuses, but they don't feel like that's an
No,
excuse. They don't
it
feel
feels
like,
real. Yeah.
yeah. And it comes from that point of, I call it this more so like it's resistance. And it's resistance because they have some fear somewhere. It always comes back to that. It
Yeah.
comes back to our
Yeah.
survival and our fear and what we've learned and where we're comfortable and where we're not comfortable, and the idea that if we're not comfortable, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, away we go. And it's so weird because like everybody strives for the comfort zone at the same time. And it's like this weird, like, oh, but your comfort zone. Well, what the heck is that? Right. And most
Yeah.
people's comfort zones now are in their screens, right? We have all these things going on. And I think that community has been distorted consciously into this, like somehow this thing where we don't actually even have to talk, right? We can just
True.
text,
You
right?
send some emojis.
Or emojis, yeah, send some symbols and let them
Yeah.
be completely misinterpreted because it
That's when
happens.
I talk to the youth nowadays. I have a friend, she's in her early 20s. She sends me messages every now and then, and I'm just like, can you translate that? I have no clue what all those initials mean. I don't know what that means.
I know I get stuff like that sometimes too, where it's like AB 76, what, huh?
Yeah.
And and for people who weren't watching, but or not watching, but are listening, I was talking about our screens, our iPhones, our iPads, and so forth. Just in all fairness, I'm holding it up because of this. People are like, what?
Yeah.
But I really do. And like places like, Facebook, whatever people's feelings are, there's very mixed ideas of Facebook and Instagram and all of this. And it's like, look at all the friends you have. And that's community. It's like, no, Facebook groups, as wonderful as they are, we have a lovely Facebook group.
Yeah.
It's like kind of exciting to be able to have a gathering space and share some ideas with people that we've never met or we've never known. And that's lovely. However, unless they come into the community and start sharing back, right, and we actually get to connect with them on some level, this idea of virtual community has very strong barriers to it, very
Yeah.
strong boundaries to it, that I think people hide behind a lot. So that's one of the ways I think people don't even know how to come into community, because it's fine to show up on, I mean, how many people show up on a Zoom and they get dressed and they put on their makeup and they do all those things, and they show up
And
on
then
this.
they wear sweatpants.
Well, yeah, that too. But
Up
and
to
they
here,
show
we're
up on
looking good.
they show up on a Zoom. Yeah, you should see. Anyway, I walk my dogs before I do this. So, but the reality of it is that they show up and they turn it on, right? We're now on camera. Yay, we're going to be these beautiful people on camera, be our best. And when it comes to true community, what I see us as, it's like whether we're on camera, whether we're on phone, whether we're on whatever, to audio, however we're connecting, and at times in person, um, like if you want to be a mess and fall apart, that's okay too, right? To be vulnerable, that's okay. To be in a safe space with individuals who will hold you
Well,
up.
I think that the reason why it's really hard for people to really find themselves is, for one, there's the extreme every day. Like if you look online, there's the extreme from you can't fall apart to, oh my God, who's going to suffer with me? Who is going
Yeah,
to,
trauma addict. Yes.
support my own suffering so that I can feel, confirmed in what I experience is true. And I think that's where we really have to look is the in between. Just like with anything, I just had a couple conversations the last couple days about labels. And me as a sociologist, oh my God, sociologists love labels, right? Because we like to categorize everything and then we create statistics and empirical studies around it. It's great. But I realized studying that over the years has also gotten me to, we're separating people. We're separating. And it's the same with these assessments, that people get to do. I'm an Enneagram that, and as much as I love human design, but all of that is just a guideline. It's not the truth of who we are. But a lot of people use that then as
Mm-hmm.
an excuse to show up in a certain way that keeps them away from getting uncomfortable, having to get uncomfortable. I just had a really great conversation. I teach in the morning on Mondays and Wednesdays, kids under 15, and they didn't want to do something that I told them to do. And so we were talking about what are the life skills that you get to learn through doing something that you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty aware, I was like, well, it's going to force us to grow and to do this. But I think as adults, we often forget to parent ourselves in that way, to push ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable to growth. Because until 18, our parents do that every day. Did you do your homework? Did you brush your teeth? Because if
Well,
you don't, this
maybe.
happens, right?
I do have to say that that's not necessarily the case for everybody because that wasn't the case for me.
I
But
know.
there people do have different experiences. However, you're exactly right in that we grow up without learning
Yeah.
that reality. Excuse me. So, I just want to speak to the fact that not everybody has that traditional experience of their parents, telling them how to take and live their lives and so forth until they're
Right. But if
18.
it's not the parents, you have a school system, you need to get certain grades to pass to the next class,
Mhm.
or unless you were homeschooled, obviously, but
Even then, you still have to get
you
certain
have
grades.
to still
No matter
pass,
in
right?
life, no
Yeah.
matter what the experience is, I think the bottom line is there's societal constraints that tell you how you're supposed to behave,
Yeah.
what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to achieve. And we grow up boxed in by all of that and labeled by all of these different experiences.
Yeah.
And then at some point we get spat out into the world and say, okay, now you go figure it out. And we don't have a clue even who we are.
And then we attach to all these different labels, to these forms of, oh, this is who I am. This is what identifies me. And then we get sucked into it, literally. Like I know I have. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, that doesn't align with my design, or this doesn't align with this and this and this. So I'm not going to do it. When I actually knew on a very deep level, I'm like, no, I'm actually good at this. Like, this is what I know I meant to do coming from my heart. I had a conversation with a friend, and he always like, I'm very introverted. I don't want to talk to people. I don't know how to talk to people. I'm by myself. And over the last years of doing a lot of internal work, they now came back and said, you know what, I realized I did use it actually as an excuse to not to have to connect with people,
Mhm.
because I didn't know how to find the balance. I was always in this constant state of overwhelm, and what if, and what do they think about me? And if I tell them and share about that, then, it's about reputation, a certain way of presenting yourself. And they were very clear. Now that I really figured out who I am and how I can use my voice, I know I used that label of introvert in a way that didn't support me. And even for me, I always labeled myself as this extrovert. So I get to be out there, right? But I grew up very shy, extremely shy. It switched when I was 16 and I went to Spain by myself for New Year's and I came back a different person. I don't know what happened. It just, even my friends were like, who are you? We don't know you. Why are you talking? Why are you standing up in front of the class? Would never do that. But I realized the older and the deeper I get, the more I find the balance. And even when I do all these, assessment stuff, I always end up in the middle.
Mhm.
Somehow. It's very close to the middle of whatever it is. If you have the disc one, it always ends up very close in the middle. Very balanced. And I think that's where we have used this programming as a separation, but it's been done intentionally to the population, because even within sociology, I'll be honest, I loved what I studied, but it also intentionally created separation under the disguise of understanding.
Right. Because we got all the labels at that point, like you said.
Yeah,
We love the labels, and then the labels give us the way to handle the situation,
yeah,
right? Which is, as a sociologist, you study to sort of, it's like, to me, I look at it like you're finding categories, and then inside those categories, there's the answers of how to
yeah,
work inside that
yeah,
category. When I work, we're not dissimilar in the respect that, working as an intuitive and as a healing practitioner and so forth, as a conduit. The one thing that I've in all the studies I've had and all the different modalities I've learned and different things I've been trained in and all of that. And people say, well, what is it that you do? And I function as a conduit. I function as an intuitive. And sometimes they're like, I don't get that. And for some people, it's not framed enough for them to be comfortable working. But
yeah,
the reason that I work like that is because I have not found and it's just I have not found the way. So for me it's like I almost reject all the labels at this stage, because it's
yeah,
like I can't treat you under the guise of this, right? I have to just look and see what you show me,
yeah,
and then go to where I intuit the reality, which I think is what your work has definitely evolved into. Intuit the reality of where you are, to illuminate for you where you are, so that you can also kind of we can work together, so you can decide where you really want to be, like, and how is that path going to open for you. And it's so simple. The work is actually so simple when you can just connect,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
that's the thing that and simple and easy are not related. So anybody who's listening, I'm not saying it's easy to do it. I'm just saying it's
I
a
always
very
have to make
simple.
that distinction too. Yeah.
Yes. But the reality of it is when we talk about community, when we're coming into community, especially in this culture, in North America overall, it's like we are so sort of disconnected from this idea, because we're so connected into the commoditization of life. And community
Mm,
and commoditization don't go together,
no.
right? Because if it's all about what we have, then we're not looking at another individual as to the quality of who they are as a person. We're looking at that other individual as like, what do they have that I don't have? And what do I need in order to keep up with them?
Yeah.
And how do we, who do we associate with? And, how do they, because they say, oh, the five people you associate with, they're really going to reflect your entire life and lifestyle and all of that. And I
See,
agree with that on an
I
energetic level. I do.
to
If you
some
hang out with
degree,
negative
but yeah,
people,
yeah.
if
There
you hang
is a
out with
middle
negative
ground again,
people,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So if you're hanging out with negative, you might find yourself being negative. But this whole idea that the quality of the person you hang out with is reflected by whether they live on the big house on the hill, or
Yeah.
whether they live in the apartment. And and you need to hang out with the people with the big house on the hill because that's what you want. That's what I'm talking about. So there's no community in that. That's mercenary, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't find really great, enlightened, loving people in that. But is that really what you're looking for? Or are you
I
just
hang out with you because you have what I want. And so I need to hang
exactly,
out with you so I can attract what I want.
exactly,
Wow, that sounds actually bad if you say it that way, right? It's like,
right?
thanks for being my friend, I guess.
Exactly. Well, and then how deep is that friendship? Just to going back to like
Yeah.
again, something like Facebook where everybody demonstrates their best life, right? And that's the same other side of that, is that's the same thing that gets people addicted to their drama and their pain, and they become these trauma addicts. And then they're like, oh, please, everybody commiserate with me, live with me
Yeah.
inside my pain, come share your pain with me, let's just be in pain together, right? And then from there, there's fear, there's hatred, there's all of this division and derision, and I'm right, I have to be right because I can't possibly be wrong, because that would be too painful.
Yeah.
And all of that is separation, 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 separation. And not saying that that doesn't happen all over the world. I just think in North America it's cultivated. And I think that's also why when we look at our community and we look at our economy and we look at who really thrives and just goes headlong into it and goes for it and shows up and has and reaps the benefits, not only emotionally but even financially reaps
Yeah.
the benefits, right? It's other countries,
True.
right? It's other places that
It's true.
culturally have a different idea and come from a place a little bit more, whether it's being forced, however, through some form of government political structure where they kind of have to find their way together to make, to make things happen, or, they have to all cultivate the garden so that they can actually eat or whatever it is.
I mean, we both grew up in different cultures,
Yes.
I mean, we both didn't grow up here within the US.
No.
We moved here the last couple of years. But for me, I grew up in East Germany, so that was under communism. Now, personally, I wasn't that old back then, so I don't remember exactly what happens. But looking back, of course, you see there was a lot of structure, everyone felt taken care of. Of course, there was a lot of force as well. But if you look at it as horrible sides there are to communism, there were the good sides too, because community had to work together. If you look at the dynamics between East and West, I went to school to university in West Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Friends that I made in East Germany, they're still my friends. If I were to go back and we would just hang out, it would be like old days. West Germany is way more fast living, and they adapted to the American way because America took over that side, right? And they have a lot of American military bases on that side, and we call it in Germany Americanized Americanism that took over.
Americanization. Yes.
Yeah, that word. So it's a complete different mindset in how we create community. I really appreciated that the way I grew up. It was just very tight-knit, where when I went to college, it was backstabbing. I had to be, faster. I don't want to have anything to do with you, or I hurt you, or someone told me that you said this, and even if it wasn't true, it was always this backstabbing and behind the back, and then suddenly a group of people comes at you, and I'm speaking from experience, obviously. So it was kind of the weird dynamic. It was really difficult to hold on to friendship, to community, where growing up, I didn't have that. And so going into a different country where that's not as valued as the way I grew up is difficult. You feel like an outsider. I'm like, why do people not trust me? Why do people not respond to me? Or, it's all these questions that come up. And, obviously living here longer and then all my studies, it makes sense now because of all these labels instead of just being.
Right. Instead of just being. And I mean, I grew up, I was born and raised in Canada, so I was always in North America, but people think, oh, it's the same. It's not. It's a very different country.
No, it's
It was
not.
part of England for a long, 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 long time under the monarchy and everything. So we have this very sort of British attitude about a lot of things. But also I was raised by parents who grew up in Africa. So, they're totally different reality. And I'm very grateful for that because of the values that they instilled and because of just the way that they grew up. And my parents were also older, which for my generation was not, it wasn't unheard of, but it kind of was. It was still, we weren't in the place where we are now, where women are often entering into motherhood in their late 40s, because that's happening a lot now. Okay, that was just sort of different for our time. So what happened for me was my understanding of how to develop community actually came later in life, because we didn't have the dynamic of that. We
Hmm.
didn't have family around us because all family was overseas. If there really was anything, everything was
Same
very
for me here.
overseas.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so it was very sort of isolated. And then my parents' morals and values were not completely out of alignment for the morals and values in the country, but we're talking a young country that was very influenced by the US. And so these things were very fluid. And then we were talking also a country that became sort of this, we have the, in Canada, there's this huge open door policy. Everybody just come live here. So, you
Right.
know, we also don't necessarily, when people say, well, what's your identity as a Canadian? Like, what is it? It's a very hard question to answer because we don't really have a Canadian culture. And I mean that with no disrespect to any Canadian person. We have our own loves and views and all of those things. We're just, I think we identify as just this melting pot,
Hmm.
right? And that is a lovely thing, except when it comes to sometimes understanding how to connect with something when you don't totally know who you are, right? So
Yeah.
I always was sort of a little bit of an outsider, also because of just a lot of other reasons in my life. There was just a lot of reasons why I was an outsider, but I always had the arts, and I always had music, and I always had, you know, choir and dance and ultimately
Yeah.
acting and all these things. And that's how I actually learned how to connect, was through the arts and then I had to recognize that, again, for like I said, just talked about earlier, turn on the camera, now you're doing your thing, right? I
Yeah.
had to also recognize, okay, my life on stage and my life off stage, right? I actually need to know how to connect with people off stage too, and not just be on all the time, because then when I'm
Yeah.
on my own, I'm exhausted. And that prevented me for a long time from even creating community, because I believed for a long time, and it really started my spiritual path and my quests to heal myself, was like, if I had a community, I was somehow responsible for them. I had to make it okay for them.
Ooh,
I
I
had to
can
make
relate to that.
Yeah, I had to
Yes.
make it okay. I had to make sure they were happy. I had to make sure everything was
Yeah.
important and good. And we're running out of time, and we're getting into this deep, deep, deep subject. We may have to continue this conversation next time.
Yes.
But hopefully this is like tapping into some people. Like, community is not about taking responsibility and making sure that everybody is happy.
No, it's stepping into your own genius. And I think that's what we're really trying to practice with the New Earth co-creators, to allow people to step into their own genius. And that allows for me too, while, you know, we both were a big part of creating the foundation of it, but it allows me to step into my genius and not have to be responsible for how everyone else is feeling and how they show up. Because at some point they have to make that decision themselves, and how they want to show up and what they actually want to get out of this. Because if you don't show up at all, you're not going to get anything out of it either.
Mhm.
Because again, a harmony between giving and receiving, right? So,
Well, the waiting and seeing part, to me, that's the same thing as resisting
yeah,
community and not really having community. It's like, I'm not going to show up for you until I see how you show up for me, right?
yeah,
Then I'll show up for you, but I got to see how you show up for me.
yeah,
And that's the thing that I think we run into here in this continent, and in the US
yeah.
in particular, that doesn't necessarily happen other places, for exactly what we were talking about, is this reality of like, oh, well, I'm going to wait and see how this works. And then if it works, then I'll take, you know, some action and go further.
And that
And
really just goes back to not trusting yourself and trusting your decision that you made in the moment to joining something, you know, something that you felt drawn to intuitively. I mean, that's the only reason why you said yes in the first place, because something sparked something inside of you, right?
right.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to knowing how to show up, right?
Yeah.
Because we're asking, like, okay, we all have filters, we all have stories, we all have past, we all have history, we all have had bad things happen to us. All of us have,
Yeah.
you know, to whatever degree or scale, doesn't matter. It's, we've all had the crap, and, you know, and we've had to sift through it. And I think every single one of us, no matter how highest heart centric we can be, we still sometimes go back to that human space of being kind of afraid that that could
Oh,
happen
yeah.
again,
Yeah.
right? But that's, to me, the whole reason why community is so, so valuable at this point in time, because I believe, 90% of the population right now is living more from that place of like, oh no, bad things could happen,
Yeah.
which is stopping them from taking any level of action, which is ensuring
All
that
the
bad things
what
aren't
ifs,
happening.
right? Yeah, all
Yeah.
the what if it doesn't work out? What if
So
I'm gonna make a fool of myself? What if I'm like, what if it's gonna be amazing
what if it
and
works?
successful
Exactly.
and works and but we always go to this negative first because it helps us to stay safe and to stay in control, right?
Well,
Because
that's all
the
an illusion, though, because the
Mhm.
negativity ensures that we're not safe. And
Yeah.
and people who try to stay in control, it's like I have to hold on to this. I'm in control of this. I've got to hold on to it. And then some storm comes, and it's like, oh, and we're gone, right? Because we're
Yeah.
holding on to it. It's like, no, let it go. Stay in charge. But if you let it go, it'll fly by you.
That
Fine,
just reminded me of someone holding a knife, like trying to protect themselves. And if it
right?
gets chaotic, well, how often do you point the knife suddenly at yourself and hurt yourself
Exactly,
with it, right? I mean,
exactly.
that's a really drastic example, but maybe we all need it.
But it's
But
being in
it's
the eye of the
interesting.
storm. If you're in the
Yeah.
eye of the storm, it's quiet and you can watch everything swirling around. And then wherever this might land, you can always go get it, right? If it's important, you can
If
always
you
go
really, really need
get it.
it.
Yeah, if you really need it, you can always go get it. But to come back to this place of recognizing, hey, what would I prefer? What if it does work? Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
This is a place where, you know what? If you just show up, if you fall flat on your face, so what? We're all here. We'll lift you up. It's okay. We all fall on our faces, right? Look at a little baby learning how to walk. Like how many
Yeah.
times does he take a face plant or she falls on her butt, right? But they don't stop, right?
No, they keep
So
going because they see
exactly.
others do it as well, like I want to get there. I want to accomplish something. So, with that, since we are almost at our time now,
Less than two
um,
minutes.
I know. What I wanted to say with that is actually really just allowing ourselves the question, what is it that I do when it comes to community that keeps me from really creating connection, to add who I am into the mix, to create something valuable, to create something amazing together.
Mhm,
As you always say, together we rise. But the
mhm.
question is, what do I do to contribute to the potential separation of why certain things don't work out the way they're supposed to, or I thought they would? How do I contribute to that? And what consciously and subconsciously, what excuse am I using to not say yes and to reach out
Or resistance if you want to be a
or
little
resist?
kinder to yourself,
Okay.
because sometimes
Yes.
people get a little about excuses. But so, what resistance? Where am I feeling resistance?
Yeah.
And the bottom line is to this in a community or anywhere that you are, um, be the person. Like, I'm going to wait to see how you show up for me. Okay, great. How do you want someone to show up for you? Show up that way.
Yeah.
You'll have them show back up for you because that's the way it works. So if you are hearing us and you're part of this community, awesome. Step in a little bit more. We would love to get to know you a little bit on a deeper, higher
Yeah.
level, if you will. And if you have no idea what you were talking about, what can they do, Isabel?
Go to our website, newearthcc.org. Yes, and join our community and just try it. Have fun with it, just practice and then take it into your local community as well.
Absolutely. So remember, everybody, peace and love always, and together we rise.
Yes, we do.
See you next time.
Love you.